Hey guys, welcome back to Medical Coding with Blue. Today's episode is going to be real talk about my trade school experience. This was a question that was posed to me by one of the viewers, so let's go ahead and get started. I have always said that medical coding found me. It wasn't the other way around because I had no idea what medical coding was. I didn't even know this field even existed, okay? I was unemployed and I was going to one of these classes that they had us go to for job retraining, because they have you go through how to do an interview, how to write a resume, and job retraining was one of the classes that they were offering. And they said, if you are willing to go to a school program, we will pay for the school, but you have to go to school and you have to get a job in the field that you were trained in. That was the deal. So I said, okay, well, one of the jobs that they had listed was for accounting. So I was like, oh, I can do that. Accounting, sure. I'm a whiz when it comes to math. I love math. So that would be something I can do independently. I can work independently and do like bookkeeping and things like that. No big deal. And so I had got hooked up with my case manager, Enrique. And he said, I see here that you like to do accounting. So I was like, yeah, I want to do accounting. And then he goes, well, what about medical coding? And I said, oh, no, I don't do nothing with needles. And he goes, oh, no, it has nothing to do with needles. It has everything to do with looking at medical charts and putting diagnosis and procedures into codes for like insurance companies and for statistical purposes. So I said, oh, okay, that sounds interesting, And so he said, okay, well, you have to look at 3 different trade schools you want to go to and just pick which one out of these 3 you want to go to. So I said, okay. He goes, and if you decide you don't want to do it, let me know and we can put you in the accounting program. So I said, okay, fair enough. So I started going to these different places, and they were telling me all of this stuff about this profession I had no idea about. And they were saying things like, they were giving me acronyms like, HEMA and AAPC, and they were giving me all these credential names, and I'm like, okay, this doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know what this is, And so of the 3 that I had went to visit the campus, the one that I picked was the school that did not talk about money. So this was the thing. I noticed out of the 3 that 2 schools immediately talked about money and how much money I was going to be making and what the field pays and things like that. I mean, it was just all about money at first, and there wasn't anything about like the program, the curriculum, what was going on. It was all about the money. Like that was supposed to entice me, And so I was like, But then when I went to the school that I actually ended up picking, she started telling me about what credential I was going to be able to sit for if I went through their program. That they trained for the American Health Information Management Association credential, for the HEMA, for the CCA, the Certified Coding Associate, and they said that is the entry level credential, and that this is for people with no background in medical, and it's the starting one basically. And then she said that there was other credentials that were mostly for inpatient or outpatient, and there's one that is just for outpatient, but it would, I could get those later on. So I was like, okay. She goes, but you want to start out with the entry level credentials. So I said, okay. So I started looking into a HEMA, and I started looking at the things that they offered, and I really liked their website and things like that. And so she did say that that they had classes like seminars and stuff like that, like twice a week, once or twice a week sometimes. And it would be like a coder that would come in and talk, and sort of talk about like different topics like evaluation and management and procedure coding and diagnosis coding, giving different scenarios and things like that. So I was like, oh, okay. But she did say this was all going to be on you. This is self-paced, and typically the program will take 9 months, but that you can have longer if you needed it. Well, my whole goal was to be able to get through the school quickly, and I said, well, is there a, like, if you finish it in less than 9 months, is that okay? And she's like, oh yeah, it is totally self-paced as long as you're passing each section. And they had each section broken down, like they had the section for HIPAA, and they had a section for anatomy, and they had a section for pathology, and they had a section for medical terminology, and then it went, evaluation and management, and CPT, and diagnosis, and not necessarily in that order, but just so you get an idea. And then like legal things like that. So there was all these course listings, and she said every time you pass a course, you will get a different set of books for the next course. I am a book freak. If you've watched any of my videos, you know I am a complete book freak. I love books. I can't get enough, okay? So when you tell me that when I get done, I get new books, I'm like, ooh, that was my incentive too, to get through the program. So as I'm going through, I'm getting these new books, and some courses I literally was able to finish in a whole day, and some was like 2 days, and all the meanwhile, I'm going to this school, because it wasn't like a regular, like I said, schedule or anything like that. They at the program just said that you need to be there for at least 2 hours. Okay, at a minimum of 2 hours per day during the week. If you did any more than that, then that was fine. But at least 2 hours. So I was like, okay, because in their mind, I guess you could still look for a job and things like that. So I still worked while I was in the trade school. So I would go in, and I would log in, and I'd work through the program, whatever module I had that day. And sometimes I would be there for 2 hours. Sometimes I was most often I was there for 4 hours. Sometimes I would be there 8 hours. A couple times I was there like 10 hours, because I was literally just like wanting to get through, and I could get through, so that was my motivation too, because I wanted to hurry up and get out. And I said, the quicker you get through the program, the sooner you can take your credential, the sooner you'd be able to get out into the real world and start coding. So I was like, okay, so that was my whole thing, was just trying to get through the program as quick as I could. And I learned very quickly that because it is independent study, that in order to maintain and retain stuff, I had to take notes, and I had to make sure that I was reading everything. And then my mom got me on flashcards, so she started helping me do flashcards and things like that. And having that mind body connection when it comes to being able to recall things is really helpful, because we would literally sit there, and she would just drill on, like, she would just like pop quiz, like she would grab some flashcards for me, and she would say, okay, what's this, and what's this, and what's this, and what's this, and then we would just go through, and the ones that I was not getting, she'd put those in a stack, and then we would go through those, and she'd say, okay, then this is what you need to work on. So I said, okay. So having my mom's support was really huge during this time in being in trade school. And that is something that I will say too, because a lot of people that I did come across, because there was like so many different specialties, just different professions, I should say professions, specialties. You see, my mind is in the hospital. There were so many different professions that were studying there in the same school. Everybody was doing self-paced. Some people were doing real estate. Some people were doing like bookkeeping, accounting, things like that. And there were some other programs, like computer programs too. So they were all doing self-paced. So when you found another medical coder, it was like, oh, okay, you're in the medical coding program too. Oh, yeah. And so we would all, chit chat and things like that. And we would do study groups. And then when we started doing study groups, it got a little bit easier because, when you're going through these self-paced programs, sometimes it's not so easy to understand this computer that's just talking to you all day long. And there you are with the headphones and watching the videos and, answering the questions and things like that. And for us in our study group, when I started introducing the idea of the flashcards, I was like, well, my mom and I have been working on flashcards together, and how would you guys like to do that too? So it was a huge hit because we were able to retain a lot of stuff that way too. And so everybody liked it, and so that's why I always suggest flashcards, because the flashcards really did help. A couple of the ladies that were in the study group had been in the program for a little while. They had been there for a few months more than I did. At that time, I had been maybe there for like a couple months, and they'd already been there for 5 months. And they were like, we just don't get it, and there's nobody here to teach us. So when you are in a self-paced program, that's something to keep in mind too. Do you need to have somebody to explain things to you? Can you learn independently? And a lot of people think maybe they can't learn independently. But when you have that drive to know and learn, you can surprise yourself, but you have to be very selective about who you listen to as well. Don't listen to anybody that's being negative. I got to say that right out of the gate too. Because the ladies, like I said, that were taking a lot longer to get through the program, because it was only ladies, okay? Not to say the men shouldn't be medical coders. We welcome men. There's not enough male medical coders, in my opinion, at least. I think it should be a little bit more balanced. But in the program, it was all ladies. And they would come in, and of course, they would say, well, my old man doesn't think I can do it, and, he thinks I'm stupid. Or somebody would say, my mom thinks I'm stupid, or my dad thinks I'm stupid, or, people don't believe in me. And so that was horrible to hear. It was like, who says that? You're an adult trying to learn, and you're trying to better your life, and so I would just do my part to encourage them, because to me, I never ever want to hear anybody to tell somebody that they're stupid, they can't do it, they can't learn. That's wrong, And I'm very lucky that I had my mom to believe in me and to encourage me, because I was going through a very difficult time personally at the time. I was going through that. I was in my late 20s, and I was going through a divorce. So I was going literally from my mother's house to my husband's house, and then back to my mom's house. And that's when I, started going to school for medical coding, because I was unemployed, and, and that was how my whole journey started. And like I said, medical coding found me. I just getting through the school and knowing that, just it was like a sort of self-propelled. You had to have the discipline to go through the school. And that's how I looked at it too. And, for my mom, that she was there with me the whole time. And, she would say, well, if I wasn't grasping something, she would tell me to read the book again, and then she would tell me to first start with the questions that were in the book, like at the end of the section, start with the questions, read the questions first, and then go to the front of the book, or go to the beginning of the section, and then just read from there, because at least what questions are they going to look for. So I was like, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. So that's how I was able to learn that way too, because just sort of having to stop and think, because it's a lot of information when you're in school, and then you're just reading it all, or you're watching videos. So just having that sort of breakdown of like, how can I learn all of this stuff? Okay, well, let's just stop and look at it one section at a time. Don't try to get so overwhelmed. And, that was really good. It was really good to have her support and, have her to believe in me too, because there was times when I was just like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? It wasn't that I didn't think that I could do it. It was just like, what am I doing? Because because sometimes like when you get started with it, it just does not make sense, and they had told us, they warned us before, that the evaluation and management course was going to be the most difficult to get through because people were taking it and failing. And then there was people that would take that portion of the course and then they would stop because they could not pass that portion of the course. So it's just like, that's a shame, because like all that money that they spend to go to the school and to do all of that, and they could not get through that one section, and it just sort of stopped them. And so that was why I chose to read the book cover to cover, because I knew it was important to make sure that I understood everything, even though at the time it did not make sense as I was reading it. Later on, when I was in the program, when I was going through the module, it started to make sense. So that was something that I was really glad that I did. And even the people that were in my study group, they're like, why are you doing that? That's so much work, But I'm like, but this is the only way I'm going to be able to understand. And this is what you're going to be tested on, So that's why you would have to read all of that. And they were like, well, we don't have to do that. It's not required. I understand. But at that moment, I learned that going above and beyond when it came to medical coding was huge, it was huge. And so I think about that now, just going above and beyond and trying to read everything, and I still continue to do that now, but once I finally finished through the entire program, and they had scared us because they said that the credential exam, once you go for the credential exam, because they told us that we were not going to get a certificate that said we completed a program. That is a confusing part for some people. Some schools will offer a certificate at the end of your program that says you have completed a medical billing and coding program. And some people think that you can take this certificate and go to a job and try to get a job as a medical coder. This is not the same as having a credential with a nationally recognized medical coding association like AHIMA or AAPC. So that's why they told us, we're not going to give you a certificate. You just have to go and take your credential exam once you get done. Once you've completed the program, you need to go take your credential exam. And so when at the end of the program, when I finally finished and they said, okay, are you ready? And I said, I'm going to wait a couple of weeks and then I'm going to go take my exam. And so for the next couple of weeks after I got done with the program, I took the time to study more, and then a couple of days before, about a week before, my mom was like, okay, you can stop now. And she's like, you're going to learn. You've learned everything you're going to learn. Now it's just time to relax. And when you go in to take that exam, I'll never forget what she told me. She's like, you can do anything you want to do. And she's like, I know you can do this, and she's always been that for me. She was always, that strong cheerleader for me, and, my mom's been gone 10 years, and there are some days now too, still to this day, that I want to call her so bad, or I want to see her and tell her, Mom, I did this, or Mom, this happened, or whatever. And, I know that, she's with me, but it was really something to get through that time and have that support, because that support means everything. When you have people that are around you that are very positive, that helps, and it makes all the difference in the world. Because getting through the program is one thing, and then when you get out in the real world, it's another. And thankfully, my mom was there like through the whole time, like from the start of my career till I got my latest position, which is this position now that I'm in. She saw the whole thing. She literally saw the whole thing. And I look at the people that I work with now and I love the providers that I work with, the doctors and the PAs and the staff, the support staff, and I look at all the things that they do. Sometimes they make me crazy. But I'm very thankful that I work with them because they've taught me. Each one of them teaches me something, and I tell my providers this all the time. They all teach me something, whether it's patience or something, intellectual. They teach me something. Um, but I would have never have guessed this level when I was in trade school. I never would have guessed it. But having that independent drive to is really huge when you're when you're in a trade school. And some trade schools are like in a classroom type setting where they have an instructor proctoring. Not all, though, and some of it is just self-paced, and you're just basically there, just whenever. And so that's something that you have to ask the school as well. But my school made it clear that that was what they were doing there. That these were just all self-paced, and you were essentially on your own. So I basically learned it, just by reading, doing flashcards and things like that. Sometimes word puzzles, I talked about word puzzles before. Word puzzles are a lot of fun. There's a lot of free websites for creating word puzzles. And it's really good when you're trying to learn something and try to be able to recall and recall words and things like that. So look into it if you were a student and you're trying to recall. Educational games are a lot of fun. But yeah, that was one of the things that was really helpful. And just like I said, that support is really huge when you're doing things independently, and then supporting each other as far as like the other students. I always gave encouragement even back then. Because we were all literally in the same boat. You know what I mean? Like, do we know what we're doing? Are we doing the right thing? And there was people in there. I was in my late 20s, okay, when I was in medical coding school. There was some ladies there that were in their late 30s, some were in their late 40s, some were in their early 50s, and one lady was in her 60s, okay, and it's 10 years and they're still doing it. So if you're worried about your age, don't, okay, because there's people that started all the time later in life. Some people have had 2 and 3 careers, and they're just wanting to do medical coding. So it really is all about individual drive. How driven are you to do something like this? It's not going anywhere. The profession's not going anywhere. It may like revamp. It may get more faster. Well, of course, with the advent of the encoder, of course it got faster, and the encoder's been around for a while. And of course, there's going to be more things that are going to, new technology and things like that are going to make it an even faster process, but it's still going to be here. I mean, we all have healthcare, right? Healthcare is not going anywhere. This is why I always encourage people to be the best medical coder you possibly can, because what we do affects a lot of people. It affects patients, it affects providers, it affects facilities. Because if a coder is not selecting the correct diagnosis or the correct procedure, that facility or that provider can lose a lot of money. So whether you code it wrong or whether you code it overcode or if you undercode, things like that, it all potentially has an impact. And I learned that also towards the end at my trade school. They were talking about the impact that it can have. If you are not, doing things correctly, that potentially could impact, your future even as a medical coder. Because if a facility is not making money like they should be, they're going to lay off people. And so that's something to think about as well. Make sure that you know what you're doing. Try and research and learn everything that you can, because you're always going to have to learn. Okay, so and being in an independent study when you're in school is huge. Because that's a huge training for later on. And even if you are in a classroom and you've got peers and you have a teacher that's actually instructing you, that's also good as well, because then it gives you more of a hands-on experience, you know. Make sure you ask those questions before you start a trade school program, okay? Because we've all heard horror stories about trade schools, okay? I was just lucky to get through mine, because to me, I just wanted to get out and be in the real world and be a medical coder. That's all I wanted to do, you know. But yes, ask lots of questions. Go to the Better Business Bureau, see if they've had any complaints about them, okay? That you've got to do your own due diligence, okay? Make sure that you check out everything, all right? And I don't want this video to cut off on me, because this is going to be the second time I've had to film this. my record thing stops after a certain amount of time, so. And I'm not that technologically advanced yet, so I don't know how to do all this editing stuff, but I will, okay, eventually. But anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and close this up. But I hope this has answered some of your questions about what a trade school experience was like. At least this was my trade school experience, you know, all very independent, okay? And having a good support system is very key, okay? And if you don't have a good support system around you, don't have people that are positive, reach out. Say, hey, I'm going to be a new medical coder. You know, I have a question. There's no, I can never remember how it said. Like the only stupid question that's asked is not asked or something. You know what I'm saying, right? Like, there's no stupid questions, basically, you know. Because some people would say, I have a stupid question. It's not stupid. No question is stupid. Okay. So, but if you are on the fence, the only one that can make the decision is you. And sometimes you have to have things as a leap of faith. Trust me, my whole journey has been nothing but leaps of faith that have brought me to where I currently am. That brought me to who I'm currently working with. All of my favorite doctors and my favorite PAs and my favorite support staff. Like I said, even though sometimes they drive me crazy, I will still take care of them anyway, you know. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up. So I will see y'all on the next episode. But if you are a medical coder, a medical coding student, somebody curious about the fascinating world of medical coding, a provider or a nurse, I invite you to like and subscribe and follow me on my journey in medical coding. I will see y'all on the next video. Bye!